So, hello. I want to officially welcome everyone to the Pedestrian Advocacy Guide with Feet First Philly, which is a program of Clean Air Council. I'm Bobby Safransky, the events director here, and I am very excited to welcome everyone to one of many events at the 2020 virtual Greenfest Philly presented by Toyota Hybrids. If you're not familiar with Greenfest Philly, it's the area's largest environmental festival, celebrating all things sustainable for the past 15 years. Yes, this is the 15th anniversary of Greenfest, so welcome. This year, you will not be surprised to hear that it's entirely virtual with live interactive programming like the one that you are at today. And the event will continue until this Sunday, September 27th. You can see a recording of this presentation and all the other presentations that were part of Greenfest Philly at cleanair.org/Greenfest. Clean Air Council is a member-supported organization working to protect everyone's right to a healthy environment. We have over 8,000 members that bring their passion in the fight for better environmental health protections and are key to our ongoing work to protect public health and ecosystems. You can find out more at cleanair.org. And we need you. We need you with us here today at the webinar. We need you taking actions on alerts that we send out and giving us feedback on our programs, and of course, spreading our work through social media. So we want to ask you to consider becoming a member of the Clean Air Council and making a donation. I'll post a link in the chat for anyone that wants to sign up to become a member. We have over 8,000 members, but we could always use more. I'll be here assisting both Nick and Titania. We can do questions in the chat, which I'll keep an eye on, but I think we're going to hold the Q&A for the end. But feel free to throw them in there so you don't forget as the presentation continues. So without any further ado, any further stalling, I'll send things over to Titania and Nick, also from the Clean Air Council. So let me hand it over to you.
Thanks, Bobby. My name is Nick Zawala-Rogers. I just wanted to do a quick introduction to our transportation program here. I lead our transportation program where our focus is to reduce the number of people that are getting around Philadelphia and the region in a single occupancy vehicle. Transportation is the leading contributor of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States. So it's a big priority for the Clean Air Council to work on these programs. We had a presentation earlier during Greenfest, which you can find recorded online, where we talk about some of the other work that we do promoting public transportation, biking, and some trip planning that we do around that. But today we're here to talk about our pedestrian advocacy work. You probably have figured out that walking is a zero emission way of getting around, so it's a big priority for us. And with that, I'm going to let Titania kind of get into what we're here talking about today with Feet First Philly. Titania is one of our program coordinators in the transportation team, and she will take it from here.
Thank you, Nick. Hi, everyone. Welcome to our presentation today. Today, we are launching Philadelphia's very first pedestrian advocacy guide. Keeping pedestrians safe is a top priority. It came to our knowledge that most residents do not know who to go to or where to go if there's an issue in their community as it relates to various structures that affect usability and the safety of our streets. This guide is designed to help us all be safe and be advocates for each other. As we go through this presentation, we will provide you with a lot of resources that will be very helpful. So on today's agenda, we will discuss who is a pedestrian, what is Feet First Philly, we'll explain pedestrian advocacy, our pedestrian advocacy guide, our main highlights of this guide, and we'll give you a short tour of the guide as well, and then show you ways you can help, okay? So let's get going. So who is a pedestrian? So we are all pedestrians, as we all have to walk or roll from one place to another on our streets. Even drivers are pedestrians, because after parking a car, they have to walk to a building or to their house or something. So we are all pedestrians. And pedestrians are the most vulnerable road users in Philadelphia. So as of Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020, Philadelphia has a total of 58 fatalities from car crashes, and 27 of those were pedestrians. So what is Feet First Philly? Feet First Philly is a pedestrian advocacy group sponsored by the Clean Air Council. Our aims are to raise awareness of issues facing pedestrians in the city of Philadelphia, improve pedestrian environment, protect the rights of pedestrians, encourage walking as a mode of transportation, as well as for exercise and recreation. Things we have worked on recently includes advocating for recovery streets during the pandemic, helping communities to do walk audits and identify issues in their neighborhoods, leading walks in Philadelphia, and due to Corona, we'll be doing a virtual walks in the near future, so look out for that as well. So what is pedestrian advocacy? So pedestrian advocacy is the act of addressing the problems pedestrians encounter in our streets and advocating for their rights in their communities. But why is this important? As I mentioned, pedestrians are the most vulnerable road users in Philadelphia and in the world overall. And so being an advocate, we can be voices to the voiceless. We can help to make the streets safer for everyone, and only if we all know what to do and where to go. So where do you go actually, right? Or who do you call? So let's say there is illegal dumping going on in your area or parking issues. Like, where do you go? Like, who do you tell these things to? So there are many different resources available for these different issues, but these departments are not connected. In most cases, they all have different websites. And so if you are not sure exactly where you should go, you'll be on the internet searching forever, right? So with that leads us to this, our advocacy guide, because we realize that it's difficult to find the answers that we need, right? And so our guide is in place for that. And it will save you time and reduce frustration. So our advocacy guide. With proper tools and training, anyone can be an advocate. If we all know where to go to and what to look for, then we are over 80% in advocating for our society, for our safety and that of others. Our guide is developed to have all the resources in one place with brief explanation as to what issues these resources are able to solve. The online link will be available to the public today, and there is a mobile version for this as well, which makes it very convenient. It is currently in English, but Spanish version is coming soon. So in our guide, we have various topics that we group together. So we're looking at sidewalks and road conditions, and there are various issues that makes our streets unwalkable or unrollable. And these ranges from poor lighting to bad sidewalks, and they affect pedestrians in one way or another. Our guide provides information to help with these problems, and it directs you of where to go to, like, get a light on your street or know where there's construction blockages going on, and other information just to help you be safe as you navigate your way around Philadelphia. So one of the main issues is that we all want to feel safe when we go outside, and driver behavior plays a very important role in this, because the behavior of driver greatly affects the choices pedestrian makes. For example, I would not want to walk on a street or run or roll on a street where there's no traffic lights, there's no signs, and drivers are speeding crazily. And that would create fear for me, and I would expect it could create fear for everyone else too. And so our guide is in place to, if you see these issues going on, you know what to do about them to keep yourself safe and others. So parking. Parking is a big issue in the city, as people try to park wherever there's a spot, and it may not even be a parking spot. So there are different parking permits available for residents, which leads to the reduction in dangerous parking behavior, such as blocking crosswalks, double parking, and parking on sidewalks, which makes it difficult sometimes and even impossible for pedestrians to travel safely. And the quality of life. So Streets and sidewalks are an integral part of the city landscape and have direct impact on the quality of life. Clean sidewalks are enjoyable and can also encourage more people to walk for health and transportation reasons. As we can see in this next slide, we have two streets. One is very clean and the other is dirty, right? And so as safety is a big factor when people decide to walk or roll along certain sidewalks, but the state of the sidewalk is also very important. A clean sidewalk is more attractive and inviting than a dirty sidewalk. Debris, looking at the dirty sidewalk, there's also debris that is blocking the sidewalk, which will force our pedestrian to walk out into the street and then putting themselves in more danger, right? And so we want to have our street looking clean and being safe, and then attract people to walk along those streets. So for all the issues you can think about within our streets that makes walking or rolling a challenge, there are resources out there to help fix them. Different resources include advocates like Feet First Philly, Liberty Resources, and others that work with community groups to help solve these issues. We have general resources like the Streets Department and Calling 311. There's also government officials, which includes your council member, your state representatives, and more that are there to help you fix these problems too. There's also your local civic groups, like your registered community organizations and your neighborhood action committees, which are there within these communities to help solve various issues, including keeping our streets safe. There are city programs like We Walk Philly that provide opportunities for people to pursue wellness and even build connection with your neighbors. There are different mapping tools that you can use to view your neighborhood, get history of permits and licenses at any address. All these resources and more can be found in our guide. And now I will turn over to Nick, who will give you a tour of the guide and also explain how user-friendly it is.
Thanks to Tanya. So yeah, here is the URL. I'm just gonna kind of pause and wait on the screen for a second so everybody can write that down. Obviously a longer URL when you actually go there, but we made this smaller version, so hopefully you can remember it. Next slide, Tanya. All right, so this would be the kind of the tour of the website that we would do at this point. But I've done enough of these to know that doing a live tour of a website is bound to either have my internet connection go wrong or something won't load right. So I took some screenshots to give you an idea, but what we really want you to do is go there on your own and test this out and yeah, give it a shot. So this guide's organized into 4 topic categories, as Tanya said, along with an other resources tab. Each category contains multiple issues that we thought an advocate might want to address. You simply scroll through the different pages to find what you're looking for. We tried to put together the issues we thought would be the most common to look for in one place, but this certainly isn't a list of every way a pedestrian advocate can make a difference in their community. So, and that's why there's the other resources tab. Thanks. So here is the first category, sidewalks and road conditions. Under sidewalks and road conditions, you'll find information on how to address physical issues that come up in the space a person typically walks or rolls in. These issues can include poor or broken lighting in the street or sidewalk, the minimum walking space for pedestrians on a sidewalk, how to ensure that a blocked sidewalk due to construction is properly permitted, and other things. In this example here on the screen, we direct you to the website where you can report a stop sign that has been knocked down, which can create both a physical walking hazard, but also a stop sign doesn't do a very good job of slowing drivers down at the crosswalk if the stop sign isn't standing up. So this is the type of example of why we made this guide, that there's this random thing that happened in your community, you want to try to address it, and it's kind of difficult to find that information through dozens of city websites. So here you go. Next slide. Driver behavior is the next category. It's one of the most important factors in making a pedestrian not only safe but comfortable. A driver behavior can either encourage or discourage walking for transportation and recreation and health purposes. So in this section, we give information on how to request a stop sign. We talk about the city's neighborhood slow zone program for comprehensive approaches in a neighborhood. And here in this example, we go over the process for requesting speed bumps on the block to try to slow driver speed to your neighborhood and make it more appealing to walk places. This example in particular is a prime example of why we created this guide. The process to get a speed bump put into your neighborhood is both cumbersome. It's difficult to actually go through this process, but it's also difficult just to find the information about it. And when we looked it up, there's actually conflicting information on different city websites about the process to go through. So there's some things about it that were just unclear. So what we tried to do is distill this down to what a person interested in this needs to know in order to get started, and then they'll work with the city to get through the rest of the process. So we let you know here, it's a two-part process. First, you need to have a study completed by the city, which is going to basically determine if you're eligible for speed bumps. That includes some measurements that you can get started on your own, so you know if it's worth even going down this process. So how wide the street is, things like that. And then there needs to be a demonstrated speeding problem, which the city will determine through that study. If it turns out that your block is eligible for speed bumps, then you'll need to go to the next step, which is demonstrating community support. It typically involves getting a petition signed by your neighbors and showing that your council person through a letter or something like that supports this as well, and then you'll make a formal request to the streets department. Next slide. All right, so parking is our next category. Illegal parking is a huge problem for pedestrians in Philadelphia. Drivers all over the city leave their cars parked in crosswalks and on sidewalks, making it impossible to safely navigate the pedestrian space. Feet First Philly manages the Twitter campaign #NotAParkingSpot. If you see examples of that, take a photo and tag that in it and tag Feet First Philly in it. We crowdsource these reports of where illegal parking is happening. But in this guide, we wanted to show some proactive ways that advocates can help manage the parking situation in their neighborhood and reduce the prevalence of dangerous illegal parking. So this section here shows you how to obtain different types of parking regulations, including loading zones that help manage curbside problems. But on the screen here, we're talking about residential parking permits. This can be used as a tactic for advocates to increase enforcement of illegal parking on their block. Because of the weird way that this works in Philadelphia, the parking authority and the police department split up who enforces illegal parking where, and the PPA can only enforce illegal parking in areas that have parking regulations posted, like residential permit blocks. In Philadelphia, basically neighbors have to invite the PPA in, which is kind of weird. So this page walks you through the steps of how to get residential parking on your block and have a better chance of having the PPA enforced than other types of parking violations like crosswalk and sidewalk parking. Next slide. Okay, here in the quality of life section, these concerns are important because they make a place not only safe to walk, but pleasant, inviting, and enjoyable. So this section will be a reference to advocates for how to organize a block or a park cleanup and get resources and materials donated from the city to help with that. We'll also show you the steps for obtaining a city trash can as we show here. The other thing that's in this section that's really important is you'll find information about the complicated process involved in parklets, pedestrian plazas, and bike racks, all programs that enhance a public space but can be really challenging to implement. Our guide will walk you through the steps of getting these projects done. We're also always available as a resource to anyone interested in any of the advocacy discussed in this guide, especially some of the more challenging projects that you might need organizational support for. Next slide. So this guide, as we mentioned a couple times, definitely doesn't cover every issue a pedestrian advocate will come up against. We're trying to highlight some of the most common issues and centralize where you'd find information about them. But things that fall outside of what's mentioned in this guide, hopefully this tab will provide some helpful resources to you. So we included here things like 311, which you can make most types of reports to in the city. We include a list of some advocacy partners that we work with, like Liberty Resources and America Walks. There are some city maps that are helpful when navigating pedestrian advocacy issues, city programs like We Walk PHL. We show you links for how you can find your local civic groups and get involved there. And finally, as shown on the screen here, we give you the links where you can look up your elected officials and get their contact info. Sometimes your elected official is just the best way to deal with a lot of these advocacy issues instead of going through a formal process. Each of these elected officials has a constituent services staff, and their job is literally to help you with these types of things. So if it's not clear how you would address a problem that you come across, this is oftentimes the best way to deal with it. One last note is that we hope this website will continue to evolve as we learn more from you about what are the most important issues to have guidance on. So please give us feedback. We're also hosting this on a mapping website in the hopes that in the future we'll start to keep track of where people are doing pedestrian advocacy, what types of programs are being implemented where. So keep us in the loop on the advocacy that you're doing. Next slide. Okay, so how can you help? Well, I just talked about that a little bit. You can help by using this guide and being an advocate in your community. If you see problems, report it to the correct agencies. And if you're using this resource and you have feedback for us, let us know. Let us know if we're missing a topic. Let us know if there's something that you find really helpful that you were able to put to use. Next slide. All right, so here is just a couple of examples here of how we could use this guide. So and these are all pictures that either we or a partner of ours took over the last, I don't know, maybe year or so of issues that have come up. So on the left there, you can see this person is having trouble because the curb ramp is blocked and they can't get onto the sidewalk at all. And it appears to be from some type of construction project kind of in the background of that photo. So we have guidance in our guide for this issue. So one place is you can contact the Mayor's Office of Disabilities to address any type of curb ramp issue. They should be able to help you with. And we also have information on how you would look up a construction blockage and see if it's properly permitted, if they're doing things by the book, or if they're permitted only to take up some of the sidewalk but not block it off completely, and how you then report that. Let's see. So one thing to kind of raise here as an example, though, is that because this is overlapping, and a lot of times these issues are, you might come up against an issue where you call the first agency and they tell you to deal with somebody else. You call them and they tell you to deal with the first agency. So this advocacy guide, is definitely a place to start, and there'll be some troubleshooting, and it won't be easy, but hopefully we can start to arm you with the tools of what to do when you come up against these. In the middle tab here, we have a blocked crosswalk. So here, check out that parking tab for all the ways that you can address illegal parking issues in your neighborhood. And then finally on the right, we have a commercial corridor that would benefit from a city trash can, which we can show you how to obtain. And potentially, maybe you can organize a cleanup here. The quality of life tab will show you how you can get a trash can in a commercial corridor and how to organize and get resources for that block cleanup. Next slide. All right, so that is the end of our formal presentation, but we would be happy to take any questions. Also, before we get started on questions, I meant to give a shout out to Will Frazier, who's on our staff and did the bulk of the work researching all of these resources and figuring out where people would go to deal with all these things. So his schedule didn't let him be here today, but I wanted to make sure we give him some recognition for this great resource.
Well, thanks, Nick and Titania. That was great. I know I have a lot of things, like I really want to play around on that website and try to figure some stuff out. But from the chat, so another reminder, you can put any questions in the chat and I'll relay them to Nick and Titania. I think there's a lot of great back and forth we can have here. One question, are there any negative aspects for inviting the PPA onto your block, as you say, to help enforce illegal parking?
Yeah, I think I'm glad that question was asked because we kind of framed this in the way we did because there are negative impacts on a lot of people of inviting the police into your neighborhood to enforce illegal parking. The program that we run with Not a Parking Spot used to alert the relevant police district when there was illegal parking going on. And we've taken a stance as an organization to no longer advocate for armed police enforcement of illegal parking issues. We're specifically just directing our complaints and for enforcement from the PPA because they typically aren't armed officers.
Great. Another question is in the city of Philadelphia, who do you call when telephone wires fall down on the pedestrian eye level?
All right, that's a good question. I have to say that you've stumped me, but I'm going to guess that if you go into the sidewalks and road conditions tab, it's going to be it's probably going to be the streets department. You could also use a generic 311 complaint, but the same people who are going to be responsible for lighting and street sign issues are probably also going to be a helpful place to start with telephone wires. However, some of that might be utility dependent, so they might direct you to the utility company to deal with that. But hopefully you at least get a starting place out of this guide.
Yeah, I think our colleague Russell did an environmental hazards guide where he kind of talked about, and he really advocated for just using 311 for any issue, even if they're not ultimately the person or the department that helps, they can at least kind of point you to the right direction. And he really said, even if it might be a streets problem or it might be, PICO in this case, just bringing it up to 311, they know exactly who to call for that. So they'll at least point you in the right direction.
Yeah, and then, something that Russell also always advocates for and is sure to point out about 311 is once you've logged it there, there's a record of it. And so that can help, moving forward long term.
Absolutely. We had a question about if Feet First Philly or if you work with any similar pedestrian advocacy groups in the surrounding suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yeah, we hosted a walk with Kinwood Walks on the Bala Kinwood Trail, which connects into Philadelphia and then goes out into Montgomery County last summer. So we've got a close friend there. And then we included America Walks, who's a national pedestrian advocacy group in our other resources tab. But that's probably the extent of the work that we do in the suburbs. Most of the work that we do is focused here in Philadelphia.
One question I actually had, you mentioned something about a Department of Disability for how to report the sidewalk ramps being blocked. Is that correct, the Department of Disability?
The Mayor's Office of Disabilities.
Okay. Let's see. So while we're waiting for any other questions to come through, is there anything else that you guys wanted to bring up about like your hopeful uses of this advocacy guide, possible things to look out for in the coming months as it's being used more and more frequently?
So actually, one thing that we wanted to bring up, if you go to the next slide, Titania, is little bit unrelated to the advocacy guide, but we are kind of launching both of these two things today, is we have a mini grant program that we're excited to announce. You can find information about it on our website there at that link, but we are planning to give out a handful of mini grants this fall to organizations, individuals, businesses that want to improve the public space through some of the things we talked about in the quality of life tab, installing a parklet or a plaza or an art installation, or it doesn't have to be permanent. It could be a temporary thing like participating in parking day. But we want to try to get new neighborhoods to participate in these types of programs and are offering a little bit of financial support, mini grants of between $500 and $2,000, but also our organizational support to help any of the many grant awardees to kind of go through the process with the city. So please check that out and email feetfirstphilly@cleanair.org with any questions about it, or if you have project ideas. We're encouraging applicants to reach out to us and we can discuss your project.
Great, thank you. I found the links and put them in the chat, so if people need them, they can easily find the link to the mini grant and the Feet First Philly email address, as well as further up at the top, I did paste the Pedestrian Advocacy Guide URL, so you can easily copy that instead of trying to type it in or Google it. We have a comment that they like the term parklets. Absolutely, parklets is a fun word to say, and I think it does a good job of describing exactly what it is as just a little baby park. You said that the mini grants were between $500 and $2,000.
Yep.
That's great. Do you know when, or is there a timeline for when they'll be awarded or anything?
Thanks for asking. I probably should have included that. Applications are due December 15th, so you have a few months to think about this and get organized, and we will announce projects that get awarded at the end of January.
Are there any requirements for like the space that you're proposing to have like a parklet or whatever on?
Yeah, so there's some requirements that are in the RFP there, but we are if you have an idea for a project and you're not sure if it is going to be eligible or not, reach out to us. We're trying to be pretty flexible with what we're providing support for. We're trying to be pretty easy about our requirements on our end. We just want to help make this process easier for applicants and start to see more of this community-led pedestrian stewardship. So the main responsibility for or requirement for applicants is just that it helps the public in some way.
Great, thanks. Obviously, my mind is already going to my neighborhood and how I can help that out. We had a question that kind of combines Clean Air Council's like core mission with Feet First Philly and the Advocacy Guide. How is the city doing enforcing of its anti-smoking ordinances for its buildings, which I understand extends to a little bit outside of the buildings, noting that that's a pedestrian issue as well?
I don't think the city is doing much enforcement on that, but I don't know for sure. I would definitely suggest getting in touch with Therm Runlinger about that. He works pretty closely with the city on smoking issues, so he may be able to provide some guidance there.
And I'll put Therm's email in the chat as well. He is he has been a great advocate, doing a lot of work for smoking issues in apartment buildings. And I do think that the city doesn't really enforce it. There's supposed to be a barrier, I think 25 feet of every entrance that you're supposed to not be smoking in front of, which in the city of Philadelphia is impossible because there are definitely openings to buildings every 25 feet.
Yeah. That's a good question, though, and we will use that as kind of the first bit of feedback of issues that people want to have addressed in this guide. So potentially version 2.0 might contain the correct agency to contact about that.
Yeah, and someone also points out that the disposal of cigarette butts is also a big problem. It's a pollutant and contaminant issue, for sure.
Yeah, and this is where using some of the information we have about organizing cleanups, but also how to get a trash can installed in a commercial corridor so that people have a place to put those cigarette butts instead of on the ground.
Absolutely. Great. Well, thank you so much. If there are no more questions, I think we can end it here. Definitely take time to look at the Feet First Philly Pedestrian Guide. Just looking through it as Nick was talking, it's very, very interesting. There are a lot of good resources here. I'm excited to look through and hopefully become a better advocate in my neighborhood, my little neck of West Philly over here. And I would urge everyone to do the same and reach out to feetfirstphilly@cleanair.org if you have any questions. Do you have any closing thoughts before we end this session?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to share this with you today. Both of these two programs we've been working on for a little while now, so we're very excited to have them out there in the public. Please not only use them, but share them widely. And yeah, hopefully we have more people like Bobby and all of you getting engaged in this type of advocacy in your neighborhoods.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
thank you all for joining today.
Thank you. And again, you'll be able to see this presentation or all the other ones at Greenfest on our cleanair.org/Greenfest website. Yeah, feel free to watch, rewatch if you missed any details, and send them to friends, because they'll be up there, and they're like the advocacy guide. They're great resources to learn about ways to live your life a little more sustainably, and to hopefully, like this, kind of clean and better your neighborhoods. So thanks again on behalf of everyone from the Clean Air Council. We hope to see you at more things for Greenfest and at the videos that we have on our website. All right, thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.